I have a crown and flowers. Okay, these are the only lilies I had, or somewhat lily-looking like plants that I had around the house, surprisingly enough. Um, see how long I keep this on. Um, um, okay. Chapter 1084 for One Piece. This one is, I believe it's the attempted murder of the Tenryubito, which of course, there are several Tenryubito that definitely deserve this, but at the moment, going into the chapter, so we have the cover page. We got two cover pages. We got one that is Luffy on the cover of Shonen Jump, I think, with he's got a sword that kind of looks a little bit like Enma if it was like a saber instead of a, katana. He's got a crown on top of his head. He's got a skull that has king carved into it, and he's got treasure all around him. So, he's Luffy. We'll see how all of that plays out. And then the next page that we have that is the full color spread, is a bunch of the One Piece girls at the beach, just like having fun and swimming around in the waves. And I went through and I think I got all the ones that were there. So let me just pull up my list to make sure I didn't miss any. So obviously we have Nami and Robin. We have Hancock. We have Carrot. We have Yamato. We have Tama, we have Vivi, we have Koala, Bonnie, Alti, Perona, Reiju, Rebecca, Shirahoshi, Sugar, Tashigi, and Manchetti. And I'm like, I went through the page like several times to be like, okay, did I get them all? And they're all in various types of swimsuits. A lot of them are just wearing like a beach shirt and like a bikini bottoms or over the top of their swimsuit or so. Perona's got like a little floaty umbrella that she's on. They're like riding fish, and there's like a flotation version of the Sunny and the Mary and all this other stuff. And like they're all just like having fun and everything. And I'm just like, okay. I mean, like Oda's done this before. They've done this before in the anime where they draw like all the girls together for different things. For different cover pages and stuff like that. I remember there was one a while ago that was like Oda drew a whole bunch of like the queens of One Piece. So Nami and Robin and Boa and Big Mom and a few other ones were there. In that regard. Ones that we don't have in this, we don't have Viola, which I kind of thought they would have her in there because they have Rebecca there. Kind of thought maybe they would throw in Hiyori and Otoko, but they're not there. There's, obviously, I mean, like, Oda probably could fit all of them on the page if he wanted to, but he went with these ones. And then going into the actual chapter, which, again, this follows the trend of, like, really happy, fun cover, and then, okay, now we're going to get a lot of information thrown at us in this chapter. So we start off, the whole thing takes place at Marijois. Mostly in Castle Pangea, but the first part of it starts off inside Castle Pangea, where we see Sabo fighting against like the different guards that we see roaming around the castle. These are not the Holy Knights; these are just or God's Knights, or whatever you want to call them. These are just other guards that are there. These are just other guards that are there roaming around the castle that are in charge of security. And then Sabo runs into Bonnie, and Bonnie's like, "Hey, you're Sabo, right?" And he's like, "Yeah." "Oh, Jury, Bonnie, like, what the heck are you doing here?" And she's like, I think we're both after the same thing, so let's skip the small talk. So, and then we get like them running through the castle, and like there's like a guard thing going up saying, or no, it's not a guard thing. There's Sabo communicating probably with the Den Mushi with like Karasu saying, "Hey, they broke into the guards' quarters and this is actually like an announcement via the guards. Like they broke into the guards' quarters and they stole the keys for the collars, for the slave collars and such," which of course we know that was why Sabo was in the castle to begin with. So we see Bonnie and Sabo running through the castle, and Sabo's like, "Well, I'd heard Kuma had a daughter." And she was like, "Yeah, I've always tried to keep tabs on the Revolutionary Army," which, I mean, given Bonnie's devil fruit, we don't know her actual age. We don't know exactly how long, like, as I said before in a previous video, we don't know exactly if Kuma is her biological father or her adopted father. doesn't make much of a difference in their relationship, but like it means that maybe he adopted her when she was a kid, and we don't know exactly how long ago that was, that type of a thing. Um, but these are two people who have, the world has one perception of Kuma given like the propaganda that the world government spread about him. And then these are two people that know that what Kuma is actually like, that he is actually very kind and a very good person. So I like that they're showing this meaning between Bonnie and Sabo and stuff. And like, Bonnie's like, I know that the Revolutionary Army is trustworthy and everything. So I'll leave, my dad's body with you guys, for safety. Like you guys can get a hold of his body and take care of it. And then like Sabo, he has the keys, and like one of Karasu's soot crows comes in and hands him the keys and everything. And Bonnie's like, "What the heck is that thing?" And like hands the keys to the crow so it can fly off with them. Um, and they're like, "We've got the keys and this, so that way tell Morley she can go and get Kuma and everything, away from the others and get the other slaves," which we will see in a moment. So we can get them free and everything. And then, Sabo's like, "I'm going to head off." Like one of the soot crows is like, "Well, what about you, Sabo?" And Sabo's like, "I'll be right behind you after I'm done here and everything." And, the soot crow flies off. This might be the last bit of contact that the other commanders have with Sabo, at Reverie at the moment. And so then Sabo asks Bonnie what's her next move, and she's like, "I'm gonna head to Egghead Island and find out what Vegapunk says about what he did with my father, about whether or not he can restore his mind, and see if he can, have him do it, and if he can't, then find out why," type of a thing. Which of course we're getting the payoff for this currently in the Egghead arc, where Bonnie ended up in Egghead with the Straw Hats and everything, and either has gone through the whole memory world that was her father's memories and she's aware of what happened, and either she is going to go after Vegapunk and try to hunt him down again, or she's going to help, or whatever the case may be there. And then we see a bunch of the other guards show up, and like Sabo and Bonnie are like actually hiding on top of like one of the archways that's in there, and like Sabo's holding Bonnie, the Princess Carrie style, which is kind of cute. And the guards are like, "Wait a second, I could have sworn I saw something." And there's, it's just like, there's fewer and fewer guards around here these days. And, it's just like, we're all short-handed to cover this tower. It's too big, type of thing. And there's like, "Haven't you heard? You can blame what for it." And they're like, "What's that mean?" And like Sabo and Bonnie are like hiding on top of the column, like Bonnie's like, "I owe him one," type of a thing, for like getting her away from the guards. And we still see the guards talking. They're just like, "Oh, they're all gone because they saw it." "Saw what?" "The legendary Phantom Room." It's like, "You idiot, don't talk nonsense like that." It's like the guards all arguing with each other, and like Sabo's listening because like they're close enough that they can still hear the guards talking. Sabo's like, like Phantom Room. Okay, that's at least worth checking out while I'm here. And they must jump out of the castle for a moment because like Sabo and Bonnie are now outside, and Sabo's like, "Well, the Egghead's in the in the new world, and we're heading back to paradise and everything. We're heading the opposite route." Well, that's where the Revolutionary Army and Kuma and everything are going. Sabo's gonna end up getting thrown all the way to Lucia in a little while. And Bonnie's like, "It's a little odd to see a radical revolutionary acting so friendly and everything." And they're like, "Well, we're both determined to save the same person." "Yeah, look after my dad for me." Bonnie's heading off, so we don't know exactly how Bonnie's going to get down from there, but we know that if I remember correctly, Bonnie in her disguise as Dowager Queen Connie she rode in with one of the other kings, and I want to say that it was like either King Elisabello or someone else that like had a connection to like what happened in Dressrosa. That there was like a connection there, if I remember correctly, and Bonnie like hitched a ride with them. I could be wrong on that, don't quote me, but I think that's what happened. And they had, so Bonnie's going to head off on her own. So she might just, turn back into her little tiny old lady form and go and find where her ride was and like ride off with them. Because at least that gets her to the new world. Because I believe Elizabella was from the Prudence Kingdom, I think, for the person who's working on doing like a bunch of different rulers and leaders and stuff in One Piece. I've started. I haven't hit that section yet. But if they're heading off, then she's at least going to end up in the new world, and that's at least helpful for her purposes. So they head off, and then now we cut to the empty throne room where we see Cobra is now talking with the Gorosei, and he's on his own in there, and it's like we as an audience are like, it's like yelling at the person going through the basement into the horror movie of like, don't do that type of thing. It's just like, well, we all know what's going to happen to Cobra, but now we're going to find out exactly what had happened. It's like, we know, it's like with Clue, we know the person died in the room, but now we have to find out what the instrument was and who did it, type of a thing. So we're getting this very long, drawn out thing. So we have Cobra in there, and he said that he wanted to talk to the Gorosei about stuff. So he's saying that he's like, well, perhaps I should start from the beginning for why I'm here. And he's like, so we get like a brief history of like how the world government, the 20 Kings, the original world government was formed 800 years ago. And that gives us, this gives us an overview of information that we already knew, but it kind of like solidifies a few things. And so Cobra's talking, and all the Gorosei are listening. And he's like, well, as you're aware, the organization known as the World Government was founded 800 years ago when 20 different monarchs came together. This is information we already knew. Their families all promptly moved to Marijois to live as one clan, referred to as the Celestial Dragons or the Tenryubito. Again, this is information we knew. None of this is new so far. The ones responsible for the creation of the world, and as such, they have ruled over their creation ever since. Again, no new information yet. Initially, the 20 were considered equal, and to ensure that no individual dictator would rise up from among them, they installed the empty throne. Very appropriate, we're in the giant room where the throne is kept. Each of them placed a weapon around the throne to symbolize their vow to never try to sit upon it. And as someone pointed, I watched a Grand Line review video a little while ago that pointed out the fact that like the empty throne is kind of a reference to like the Iron Throne and Game of Thrones and House of Dragon and everything. And I'm like, yeah, I can definitely see how that would apply, be something very similar in that regard. I can definitely see about that. Where that similarity comes from. Particularly with all of the weapons being, placed in front of it and everything. And like, we get like the nice shots of the throne where we see all of the swords, and there's like at least one axe, mostly swords, all jabbed into the ground, and they've all got like rust and whatever on top of them. Because they're swords that haven't been touched or taken care of in 800 years. And in all honesty, even though like Marijois is like really high up, there's still a fair amount of moisture in the air, so they're probably rusted or gathering of other types of minerals on top of them or whatever for 800 years. So again, not so much new information so far. Then Cobra is like, and at the same time, new royal families were handpicked to rule the nations. That the founders could no longer preside over those families, that the founders could no longer preside over those families, are still in power today. So this is a reference to, we saw this kind of demonstrated in Dressrosa because the Don Quixote family, who had been the original rulers of Dressrosa, prior to 800 years ago, Doflamingo's ancestors and everything, the evil king that had been in charge, that had mistreated the Tontada, that they had gone and were part of the 20 Kings and went to live on Marijois, and they picked the Riku family to become the next rulers of the kingdom, and those ancestors, they're the ancestors of, King Rikudo III and Scarlet and Violet and Rebecca. They're the current, descendants of them. So that's where that comes from. That's all referenced in the Dressrosa arc. This is what we've been told in the past, and none of that is new information. But he says, but in order to ensure the smooth transition, all references mentioning the previous dynasty's reign were removed from each of the founders' respective home countries. I don't think we've heard this before. So this is kind of a little bit like, well, I mean, like, in all honesty, it's basically just like, oh, well, we're just going to like white out these names and like write in these new names, or things like that in the records, or just have it be that like, okay, we're going to shift what's being taught in the schools and what's taught to the people and stuff like that. And countries have done this for generations and stuff at times to blot out previous rulers and things like that, in order to either make themselves look better or make other countries look worse or things like that. All has happened in the past before. History is cyclical, and so is history in One Piece. And Cobra's like, with the sole exception of Alabasta. The monarch at the time was Queen Lily, or Lili, Lili is the way that's put in the translation. Hence why I have flowers over here. And we're talking about a queen, so that's for the crown. Not that you couldn't have figured that out already. Was Queen Lili of the Nefertari family. While her name was immortalized as one of the founding 20, she did not stay and become a celestial dragon. So this actually answers, well, we'll get to something in a moment that answers one of my questions, but this shows that not all of the 20 kings, they were monarchs, were all male, because she was at least one female. The Doflamingo one, or the Don Quixote one, was probably male. Probably some other ones that were a mix of male and female together as like the rulers of these, and then of course them and their families were the ones that moved to Marie-Joie and formed the Celestial Dragon clans that we know about today. And their descendants are the ones currently running around being terrified as they're attacked by soot crows, a cat on a jetpack, and a giant that can mess with mud, that can push the ground around, all running away from them. All that fun stuff. And so Cobra's, explaining that. We're cutting around, seeing like the different Gorosei's reaction. We see St. J. Garcia Saturn and, any of the other ones, like all like just kind of watching as he's talking. Like, like, okay, some of this stuff, like knowing how the world government was founded is stuff that we kind of know about anyway. Because, well, we as the readers know about it. I don't know how much of that is exactly stuff that is like, known to the world on whole, in regards to like how that stuff was set up. But like, probably certain things were like taught to the world as, as the whole and things like that. So they know about why the celestial dragons are so important. It helps them stay in power that way. And Cobra continues, he's like, instead, she was to return to Alabasta to continue her reign, which is why the Nefertari family has continued to act as sovereigns. So, yeah, they're one of the ones that we know has continued to be that way. Has continued on down the line. And he's like, this also means that only 19 weapons were ever placed around the throne, around the empty throne. We never get like a good enough shot to be able to like count all the different weapons, but I mean, like, yeah, there's probably 19 there. This means that she did not make that oath to like not ever try to like usurp anything or like rise up or anything like that. A lot of people are going to go off on that one later. And one of the ones that's the one with a very bushy beard is it's all as you say, but what exactly is your point? It's like, okay, can we get along? We've got a committee meeting later on. We have lunch to get to. Can you keep going, Cobra? And he's like, well, Cobra's like, I've scoured all sources of my kingdom's ancient text. But as far as I can tell, all known accounts chronicling the period after the Void Century have one thing in common. Her name isn't mentioned once. And he's like, it appears Queen Lili never returned, never made it home to Alabasta. And the burden of ruling the country fell to her younger brother. Do you have any record of what became of her? So this is showing, first off, this implies that Alabasta is actually a just primogeniture monarchy, as in like the firstborn is the heir, regardless. It's not male primogeniture, it's not female primogeniture, it is just primogeniture, as in like the firstborn is the heir. Because if it was male primogeniture, then it would have been Lily's brother that would have been the one in charge anyway, not her. So that explains one of those things. Because like most of the time, from what we've seen in other kingdoms, there's not really any indication that shows one way or the other, which, I mean, by technicality isn't all that important, but it shows that Alabasta was one of the ones that's like, at the time, it was not male primogeniture. When I end up talking a lot more about when I get to the Alabasta stuff in like my different rulers and leaders videos, I'll go over that a little bit more in some of like definitions of what that stuff means. But he's like, okay, so she never returned. There's records of her before what happened with the Void Century and everything, before all of that happened. That's why he knows about her. And also, like, it's been passed down within the, Nefertari family and everything like that. He knows about that stuff with the Celestial, and the Gorosei seem fine with him knowing that stuff. And then he brings up the fact that, like, she's, like, gone from history. And he's like, well, do you have any records on your end of, like, what would have happened to her during that time frame? And J. Garcia Saturn's like, to be blunt, 800 years ago is a very long time. Yes. And we cut to where we see the room that's like full of flowers, where we, saw Imu-Sama before, where they were like, messing with the butterfly and like cutting up the different pictures and posters, wanted posters and stuff like that, where we kind of first see Imu-Sama. And he's, they're listening on like a Den Mushi that's probably like hidden somewhere in the empty throne room, or like on one of the Gorosei, like a wire or something like that, so they can hear what's going on. And St. J. Garcia Saturn is, it's like, it is true that of the 20 families, the Nefertari line did not move here. However, it was believed that the queen returned back to her country after that discussion, or after that decision. I'm sorry, but I'm afraid that details about her movements and journey are lost to the annals of history. We simply do not know. And Cobra's like, okay, moving on. In that case, what is the meaning of D? She's like, oh God, Cobra. Oh, Cobra. Oh God. And like, we go to the one that has the, the sword. And he's just like, why do you ask? And like, all of them are just kind of like, oh no, he's asking the question. Oh no. Oh no, this is not good. And he's just like, well, the truth is, a short letter penned by the queen has been passed down from one generation to the next. So, all through over the last 800 years, however many kings and queens they've had of Alabasta, this note has been passed down from one to the next. Which, I mean, I can assume that that's, that it's just like, oh, well, the heirs of age will give them the letter now. Whether or not Vivi has received this letter and knows about it, we do not know. We don't know if it goes anywhere beyond them, like, Igaram or Shaka, anything like that. Like, do they know about it? Probably not. Did Cobra tell Titi, his wife, when she was alive? When we see the silhouette of Lily, she does look like Vivi, but that's not surprising, just, considering Oda's drawing style and stuff like that. So we're seeing some of that. All of the Gorosei just do not look exceedingly happy about this. Yeah. Then we cut away from that to what would have been like the reception room, or like all of the different, like all the nobles and royals and stuff like that. We're all like conjugating and meeting and stuff like that. During the reverie, at the beginning of the reverie, where we saw, where Rebecca and Shirahoshi and Vivi all met, and, ran into Sai and Dalton and all of that stuff, where all of that was happening. So we cut back there, and we cut to where Shirahoshi has now been tied up by Kuma, by the robotic Kuma. And she's in pain because she's all been tied up now and everything like that. And we just see Charlos and Roswell. Like, Charlos is just like his giddy little annoying self and everything like that. And Shirahoshi's pleading for help and everything like that. And all this other stuff. We see the robotic Kuma is the one that tied her up, as I said. Charles is like, I finally got my mermaid, Daddy. And Rallis is like, good boy. And like we see all of the other, because when Shirahoshi had first, was being introduced to a whole bunch of people, there were a whole bunch of ruler, queens and kings like trying to pawn their sons off on her, like being like, hey, come and talk to my son. Hey, what about my son? What about mine? And like, so we see a whole bunch of those princes there, like watching as this is happening. And Shirahoshi is of course pleading for help and everything like that. And a bunch of the different princes and whatnot are just like they're all like thinking in their heads, should we help? Nope. And they all just run away. It's just like, she wasn't going to accept our marriage offers anyway, so not dealing with this. We didn't see anything. They're running off, their tails between their legs. And we see Fukaboshi has, of course, shown up. I mean, like, he was like, I turned my back for a second, and this is what happens while we're here and everything. And he's getting ready to go and attack and everything. She's like, big brother, help me and everything like that. And he's getting ready to attack. And he's like, you damn celestial dragon, stay away, get away from my sister type of a thing. And Charlos is just like ordering, the Kuma slave to, attack. And Kuma uses the laser beam to attack. It looks like all the princes were able to dodge, so it doesn't look like they got injured, but may have hit some of the other princes that were running away, so that's not going to look good. They're just like, oh, the Kuma, Bartholomew Kuma, the warrior, he's, it's truly pitiful to see how far you've fallen and everything. They don't know that he's a robot and has no memories or anything like that at this point in time. He's just running on programming at this point in time. And Charlos, Fukaboshi, Ryuboshi, and Momboshi are all getting ready to go and, attack again because, they're going to protect their sister because that's what they do, and I love them, and they're great. I love these three. I love these three brothers. They're great. And, Charlos is just, throwing a tantrum like he always does. And he's just like, gut them, Kuma. I don't care if they're royalty or anything like that. They're just fish. I just want them dead. And we see Rebecca, who has Leo, and then we also see Kabu and Vine are there as well. And she's just like, it's the baddie from before. We have to help Shirahoshi and everything. And Sai just kind of like, I guess, looks at Milzigard and was like, hey, Milzigard, can I hit him now? And Milzigard is just like, by all means, I'll take full responsibility for it, which I love. Hey, what can I say? I like Milzigard. He shows us that you can become better, life-changing experiences can happen, and you can use them and become better for it. But then he jumps in front of, but then Milzigard jumps in front of Fukaboshi, and he stops Fukaboshi, and he's like, I can vouch for them because they're pirates. They don't have a kingdom to worry about. You do. And he's stopping Fukaboshi and everything, and he's just like, Charlos is yelling at Roswell, you're at Milzigard, you're the one that hit me earlier. How could you? And everything. And just Kuma, kill him. Blah, 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 blah. Charlos being a baby. And, this is when, Fukaboshi and Milzigard are arguing and everything. And, there's a lot of good symmetry with this because, we saw at the beginning of Reverie when, after Milzigard, whacked Charlos upside the head with his mallet, whatever it was, club, I don't remember. Whacked him with that. Then he went and talked with, the Ryugu family. He talked with Neptune and the three brothers and Shirahoshi and everything. And he's, he's like, after everything that I went through with, Otohime and everything all those years ago, I've changed. I've become better. I want to do what I can to help. I want to use my status as a way to help you and provide protection as best as I can and everything. So he's willing to basically put his whatever's left of his reputation that's already in tatters on the line in order to allow Sai and Leo, in order to allow them to go and try to attack Mills, or attack Charlos, which the man deserves. So but he's like, they don't have countries to protect. You do. You have a country that you have to think about. And he's basically pointing out to Fukaboshi, Milligard is pointing out to Fukaboshi that it's just like, yes, I know you want to go and attack them, but right now you need to get your sister, and it's going to be a lot easier for, like Sai and Leo and the others to escape because, like, they're pirates. It's not like the rest of the Tontada that are with Rebecca can't just, like, hide somewhere when they're leaving, or hide with Sai as he leaves, or something like that. It's not like they can't do that. They easily can, considering how small they are. But Fukaboshi, they have to get Shirahoshi. They have to get her untangled. They have to get her to somewhere safe, so that way she's okay. That's what Melzigard is trying to point out right now to Fukaboshi. And during this time frame, both Leo and Sai are, like, winding up their attacks, and, they just, like, pile drive Charlos into the ground at the same time. Leo's using his, tail hammer, and Sai's using his dragon drill nail just to, like, bang them into the ground. And it banged Charlos into the ground and everything. And, like, we're just like, oh my god, they attacked the celestial dragon type of a thing. And it's just like, Charlos just gets, like, accordion, which I'm like, sometimes my sadist comes and my inner sadist comes out when it comes to some of the celestial dragons. And I just like accordion Charlos, and I was like, oh my god, is he dead? Did they murder a celestial dragon? And I'm like, well, he got punched out by Luffy. He got hit in the face with a giant, club already by Milzigard. Add this to his list of injuries. I'm sure he's got at the very least a concussion, if he hasn't just been walking around with very few brain cells already. So, Kuma tries to attack them, probably on Roswald's orders, tries to attack them, and then we just see Morley just, like, pop out of the ground, grab Kuma around Kuma's waist, and, like, stop picking on Kuma-chan! And just like, you don't have to listen to anyone's orders anymore, it's okay, let's go home together. And, he's like, Morley, is, grabs Kuma and, like, is, like, blorping back into the ground, after what just happened and everything. And they're just like, oh my god, what is that? Why is there a giant here? Like, all the other royalty is just, like, freaking out about this and everything. Like, the Karasu Soot Crow that had got the keys from Sabo flies in, and he's just like, I've got the keys, let's get out of here. And he's like, okay. And it's just like, grabs, it's holding Kuma and, like, just, like, blorps back into the ground. After a bunch of them, like, oh my god, that's one of the captors from, captains from the Revolution Army. That's Morley, blah, 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 blah. They're just, like, yelling about that and everything. And, so there's all this big disturbance that's going on. And we see Roswald is not happy about what just happened with Charlos, which, I mean, okay. I can't blame Roswald for being angry about his son getting beat up again, because it is his child, and he at least seems to care about his children. So there's at least that. But you and your son are horrible people. So, yeah, you deserve this. And, we see Shirahoshi and Sai. We don't get anything else on them this chapter. I'm assuming what's probably going to happen in that regard is, like, they're probably going to, like, cut whatever chains are around Shirahoshi, or, get them off of her somehow, and, like, just, like, Fukaboshi, Ryoboshi, and Mobboshi are just going to, like, grab her and run. And, like, Sai and Leo are probably going to provide distractions. Okay. Side note on this. We know that Shirahoshi and the rest of the Neptune family do make it back to Fishbone Island, because we've cut back to them post-Reverie, and we've seen them there. And they're talking with Garp, And, Shirahoshi is like, oh yeah, something happened with Vivi and everything. So it's just like, that's after what happened to February. So we know that they make it back home. We have not gotten any updates on what happened with Rebecca and the rest of the Riku family, on like Viola and Riku Joel III, and that we don't have any updates on them. We don't know where they are at the moment. They could have gotten back to Dressrosa perfectly safe, but we have not had anything that implies that that is the case. So I'm assuming that's what happened. That like maybe somehow they help with like getting Vivi out of there or whatever the case happens with that. This is all still happening while Vivi is, I think, yelling at Lucci at the moment. And we know that Garp is probably involved in some of this in regards to getting them out of the way. And we've seen Garp post Reverie because we know that currently, like, well, first Garp went and like talked with them, helped get, the Neptune family back to Fishman Island, and then they were safe down there. And then we know that currently Garp is on Egghead. So at the moment, we at least know that Garp is okay post Reverie and is dealing with what's going on Egghead against Aokiji. So there's that. I don't think we've gotten any updates on what happened with Rebecca and Viola and Riku and them, or what happened with Dalton and Kureha with like them getting back home safe. I don't think we've had any updates on them. So it's they all have powers. They can all help with like protecting Shirahoshi and getting her out of there and everything, or at the very least providing distractions while they get Shirahoshi out of there, and then help get everybody back to their places where they're supposed to be, or possibly ending up in a different place, like maybe going back to Dressrosa or something like that. So there's that. Last scene of the chapter, last page of the chapter, we cut back to the empty throne room, and we see Im walking up the stairs, and they're just like Im's not saying anything, and like all of the girls here are like, wait, great, Imu, King Cobra is still present. Like, what are you doing? And Imu just like moves, sits on the throne, and like looks down, still is the full shadowy silhouette. We have no idea what it looks like underneath that yet, with a very, very tall crown, and like looks down and is like, Lily. So okay. Yeah, kind of saw this coming. We figured that somehow it was going to be Cobra saw Im, like either walked in on Im, wheelchaired in on Im in the throne room, or this just happened where like Imu is just like blatantly going and sitting on the empty throne right in front of Cobra after they just had this conversation about like the throne being there to not have anybody rise among anybody else. I'm gonna state this now. I am aware that so many people are gonna be like, oh my god, Lily is Imu, and Vivi is actually a descendant, and blah 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 blah, and they're an ancestor of Vivi, and that's why they want Vivi. They want to take her because they look like her, and blah 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 blah. Or maybe Imu was in love with Lily, and she refused him, and that's why she's dead. Well, she's dead either way now, technically, unless she is Imu. And he wants Vivi now, because of whatever the hell else happened. And, that's what we see. Those are all the different possibilities. There's a whole bunch of other ones that people are going to throw out. I'm quite certain about it. Since I am, side note, since I am going to be doing the different royal family videos and stuff like that, I will probably end up talking more about the possibilities of what Lily is, or where she is, or what happened with her. When I get to the Alabasta videos, and once we maybe get a little bit more information from the manga, so that way I can, have a little bit more to piece together and that type of an information. I mean, like, at the moment, I'm leaning toward the theory of Imu in the past, if, was maybe in love with her and wanted her to be his queen in this regard, depending on like what Imu actually is. If Imu is male, wanted like Lily to be his queen, and she refused and was heading back, and because like she knows she didn't swear the oath, and she didn't she knows that what Imu-Sama is, we have to make her disappear. So they would have sent maybe like the predecessors of like God's Knights after her and like got rid of her, so she never arrived back at Alabasta, and then her brother took over. Or it may have been that maybe it is that, like, because other people are going to jump on the bandwagon of, oh, Lily is Imu-Sama, and like Imu-Sama is female and she's Lily, and that like Alabasta had actually been evil back in the day, and then like it was actually like her brother that like went against them and went got better and became good, and like that's why down the line Cobra and his family are good and they have a poneglyph and everything like that. So there's those options. Throwing that out there. Pretty much what I'm assuming is going to happen in the next chapter is, because we know that Sabo did see Imu-Sama sitting on the throne, so Sabo is probably going to continue run through the palace and go and investigate this, phantom room or whatever, and like end up finding Imu and like seeing this information, seeing what happens here, maybe hear some of it, and end up, he gets framed for what happened with Cobra and everything like that. So he'll probably end up in there when that happens, or very shortly after that happens, and that's where they get the picture from. As I said, I'm still of the mind that like either the Gorosei were the ones that like staged the picture, like they had Cobra killed, and then like Sabo comes in and they, like he is standing over Cobra, and they just like take the picture, and then they give that picture to Morgans, or somehow Morgans gets a hold of the picture, and then that's why he runs the story and everything like that. Some combination of what happens with that. Imu just sat on the empty throne in front of Cobra, and we'll see what happens with that. There is I believe there is a break next week. Notes here on the end of the translation that I've read. So Lily versus Lily, as in like the spelling is in Lily versus Lili. So they stated that with the spelling, they went with the Lili because it is similar to Vivi, and TT isn't like Vivi's mother in that regards. So there is that. And that's an alternative, Lily with the Lili is an alternative spelling in like France and stuff like that. So there's different countries that use that spelling instead of the other spelling. And it has different references, of course, depending on like what language and what country you're talking about. In Hebrew, it says here it means oath of God. So there's that. We'll see what ends up happening with like the official translation and stuff like that down the line. So we'll see how that goes and what the English dub does with it. We'll see how that goes. A couple of quick notes. One other quick note I wanted to point out about this. Vivi's name also comes from a flower. Again, I'll go over that a lot more in detail when I get to her for like the different rulers and stuff like that. Because by technicality, Vivi is technically now the queen of Alabasta. Just given the circumstances of the fact that her father is dead, and she is technically the rightful queen because she is his only child. So, we'll see what happens with that. But Alabasta is a desert country that is based on Egypt. This is very blatant in the entire series in that regard. So I typed in, like lilies in Egypt or whatever, like what they mean, like Egyptian mythology. And kind of what it came back with was the blue water lily is the sacred flower of ancient Egypt. It's one of the sacred flowers. Blue water lily, also known as the blue lotus or the sacred blue lily, is prominently featured on pillars, stone altars, and other parts of ancient Egyptian temples. It holds a significant place in Egyptian mythology and is regarded as a symbol of the sun and a sign of rebirth. So it doesn't mean that that's 100% because like this is also like a lotus is what it's also a representation of. It's like some of the pictures that I showed. Looks kind of more like a lotus than a lily, but that's a water lily. So there's different, setups of that, different genuses and everything like that of different flowers. So it's going to be a little bit interesting to see how this ends up getting spun because, like as I said, it was like a reference to the sun and like rebirth and everything like that. So that could tie back into like the sun god Nika and things along those lines. So we'll see. We know that there's the theory in regards to like with the Void Century, that like the war between, like, the Great Kingdom and the 20 Kings, that somehow either, Alabasta had originally been on the side of, the Great Kingdom, and then like they changed sides and they went and became, on the sides of the 20 Kings, and that made them the 20 rulers instead of the 19 rulers. Or like they were a double agent family, or maybe they started off bad and then in the end they ended up actually like Lily may have been the queen at the time when everything happened with the world government, but there's still a good chunk of time there where other ones could have been a ruler, where maybe, Lily's father or mother had been the ruler at the time when a lot of that happened during the Void Century, because there's 100 years there or so that we don't know about. And maybe they had started off bad, and then maybe, maybe Lily had been in love with Joy Boy or something along those lines, or there had been an issue there. I'm of the mind that, like, I'm hoping there's some form of like a love story involved in like the flashback for the Great Kingdom, with the One Piece and the Void Century and everything like that. I'm of the mind that it's like I want there to be some form of like a love story there. Maybe not necessarily specifically between like Joy Boy and someone else, but between like maybe someone that's part of Joy Boy's faction and someone that's part of the 20 Kings faction, or something along those lines, because that makes sense, because so many wars throughout history have been fought on the guise of love, or of, just look at the Trojan War and everything like that. Helen of Troy, Helen of Sparta, the face that launched 1,000 ships. There's hundreds of wars throughout history that have been fought because two men wanted the same woman. And she didn't either want either of them, or she wanted one of them, and the other one that she wanted was actually like was like a peasant, and she couldn't marry them, or whatever the case may be. So there's all of that fun stuff there. So those are what I wanted to point out at the moment. We'll see what happens with the next chapter. We'll see what other kind of like, I'll see what other people kind of have for theories, and kind of see which ones actually kind of make the most sense to me, and go from there. Not that it means I want to copy their theories, but I want to see what other people's ideas about what's going on with this first, and then like kind of see what make the most sense. And then like see how that would like fit into the timeline, and then go from there. So that's what I have. I thank you for watching. I hope you have a nice rest of your day. Bye.